the funny situation for me is when they're writhing around on the floor and then nobody notices and they just get up and run off, kind of thing. And that always happens. Like it's like yeah, I mean, literally they just like they're like walk off like nothing has happened. Hello, 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 and welcome to Well Shit. It really is that simple. I'm Claire.
And I'm Serena. On this podcast, we help you to understand about your 12 universal needs, why they are currently not being well met,
how to meet them in ways that work for you, and how to consistently do so in quick, easy, and simple ways that fit seamlessly into your life.
We'll also help you to understand how doing so will have a positive ripple effect in literally every area of your life.
If you like what you hear, come and join the conversation in our Facebook group.
And enjoy the show.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hey, everyone.
Today's kind of an exciting day. This is the first episode in our 4th season. And just so you know, how we run our seasons is a season basically is 52 weeks. So this is our 4th year of podcasting. I can't believe, like, when I think back to when we first began and I was like in the UK and you were sat on your bathroom floor in your old place here in Key West. My, how far we've come.
Right?
It's been an interesting few
podcast
years.
Mics and everything.
I know, right? And how long has it taken us to get? I mean, literally, we've had this for about 10 episodes now. I mean, you've had it for longer, but
I've had it for a bit longer.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's weird to think. I remember when you were like, we should do a podcast. And I'm like, yeah, all right, whatever.
Well, and it was,
and here we are.
And the funny thing was, somebody else, like it was someone else who told me that we should do a podcast. They're like talking about our little aha moments that we have and the conversations that we have. And they're like, you should record those. And I'm like, yeah, we probably should. There's some kind of helpful stuff that comes up in those. So it's like 3 whole years of podcasting. And that's like, I mean, and obviously we've actually been going longer than that. I think we're coming up on 4 years since we actually dropped our first episode. Because I believe it was October 2021 was when we actually first started recording and sharing episodes. And we're around May 2025 right now. So we're coming up on 4 years, but we've had moments where we've had to pause and we've had to take care of our needs and we've had to walk our talk in terms of what we do. So there have been gaps in that, but this is like 3 solid years of podcasting we are celebrating today. So surprise. Why is that a surprise? It's not really a surprise to either of us. Surprise if you're listening. That's what we're celebrating today.
I mean, it is kind of when you said 4 years, I'm like, oh shit. Like it feels like it's been 10 years and 1 year all at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of wild in a way because I think a lot of us use the beginning of COVID as like a reference point in our brains. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of bizarre that we started after COVID. Because to me, I'm like, it feels like we've been doing this, but like the reason that we're doing this now is because of all the work we did together during COVID behind the scenes that nobody saw. So yeah, it's kind of wild that it's that long. I mean, we've had some funny moments. There have been some good moments. There have been a lot of moments where it's like, oh fuck, we didn't hit record. We're much better at that these days.
I just looked at all the things. I'm like, I'm plugged in. Like, you can hear me. We're good for today.
Yeah, absolutely. So no, we're doing good. We've learned. We've made significant strides forward, and there is something else to celebrate today. We are finally going to begin the series that we have been talking about. I actually went back and checked this. We have been talking about recording this episode for 18 months now. Well, it's been well over a year. Like it's.
Are you sure it was not long? I feel like it was mentioned like our first season we started talking about shapes.
Oh, we talked about it, but like we had planned to record this episode.
Yes.
And it was January, not of this year, of the year before. And that was like when we had it all, like that was what we were going to do. And we were going to, it was all planned out and everything. And then
that worked for us. Like
life
at
happens.
all in our business.
Yeah. Or in our lives. I mean, let's be honest. I fine. We've had some moments we've had to pivot and adjust and make some different choices, and that's what we did. And actually, I'm really glad that we did that, because the Shapes episodes that we're going to be delivering now, like, this content didn't exist when we planned on recording this the first time. Like, a lot of this literally was created a year ago.
It was talking about totally different shapes. Like, right. I even made the mistake. Claire and I were going back and forth talking about the episode, and I was like, oh yeah, the triangles, and she's like, it's not a triangle anymore. I'm like, oh fuck yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like, it's a much more robust, like not difficult to understand, but like it just makes so much more sense now. So yes, absolutely. That's it.
Yes, absolutely. And I know I always say this, but I'm going to say it again. If you only listen to one episode, this will be a really good one to listen. In fact, no, this series, like, I mean, we joked about this on the Apology Blueprint episode, and actually I think that was the episode that kind of got us set up for doing this today. And so we're doing it very much in a similar way to the way that we did that the Apology Blueprint episode. If you haven't listened to it, please go back and listen to it, because it's another one of the, if you only listen to one episode, that's the one. No, we've already come to the conclusion. There's about 100 of these that I say that for. But these are some of, like, when I say that, it's because these are things that go so far beyond needs, that they're not just about needs. They are so much easier to apply when you understand needs and when they're put in the context of needs, and they make they're more complete when you look at them in that way. But these are things that even if you never thought about needs for the rest of your life, which I highly don't recommend, which I don't recommend at all. I highly don't recommend that you do it. This is something that would still be helpful to you. This is something that would still be, and this, like, what we're going to be talking about today, game changer. Like, for me personally, understanding this and being able to see these dynamics and how they play out, absolute game changer in so many different areas of my life, very much like the Apology Blueprint has been. And so this is another one of those where you'll get it as we're going through. You'll be like, oh wow, this is a lot of content. Like, this is very content rich stuff. Like, these next few episodes are going to be very, very content rich. In order to make sure we got through all the content and we covered it all, we have taken a lot of notes. So if you do notice us reading, like, we do our best when we are reading content not to be like meeting our needs in ways that are disempowering. Like, we still try and make it fun, and obviously we will jump in and have little conversational moments in between it, but we just really want to make sure that you get this, because this is and a lot of this you will never have heard before. Like, some of it you may have heard bits and pieces of it, but even the stuff you've heard before, there's going to be stuff about that you have literally never heard anywhere else, because we've never shared it anywhere else, and we're the ones that came up with it. So so this is like, I'm so excited that we're finally doing this, because it really, as I said, it really is like, it's
what makes up the well shit moments. Like, any of the Claire's top, you must listen to this one episode. Like, I remember when we were going through this, when it was in its simplest form, when I was going, like, I remember where I was sitting on the couch and I was like, well, shit. And that, I think it was one of the, like, all of a sudden it clicked. And if I had walked away from the content from the work at that point, like, there was no way I would have been able to walk away from this, like, knowing this information and not applying it. Like, I apply it even when I'm not meaning to. Like, my husband, he applies it to our relationship, and he's like, oh, well, I see where you are in this shape, and like, what can we do to get over it? Like, and it's just like, you don't need to get the whole thing to get this. Yes.
Yeah. You can't unknow it, and you can't understand. Should that just be understand? Anyway, you can't understand that the power of this and the meaningfulness of it as it applies to our daily lives. And yeah, we are going to get a little, I said, we're going to get a little content rich. We are going to be giving you examples of how this manifests in day-to-day life. Like, we are going to be going through that. And this is the longest series that we've ever done. This is going to be it's planned to be 8 episodes currently.
So if you know us, plan for like 10 to 15 maybe.
Yeah. And the first 4 are going to be on one of the shapes, and the second 4 is going to be on the other shape. And the reason for that is that we really wanted to take the time to understand each of the shapes and what the different positions on those shapes are, in order that you can really get this. We are going to Serena doesn't know I'm about to say this yet. We are going to make another PDF available of this, of the shapes, of the 2 shapes, so you can use it as a reference point, in order that you can see it. Because when you can visually see these things, it does help you to be like, oh, okay, I got it now. And there'll be times when, if you're watching on the video, that we'll put the shape up on the screen right now so that you can see it, in order that it will make sense. So this is one of those, if you're listening on the audio, by all means, go ahead and listen to it. But there may be moments where you might want to just pull that video up so you can see the shape, because once you can see it, it makes it easier to understand. So the reason that this is one of the most powerful, anything else you want to say before I carry on? No, cool. So the reason this is one of the most powerful things is that these shapes help you to understand and determine when the way of meeting our needs is either disempowering or empowering. Now, we've talked about the red-green spectrum in previous episodes. If you haven't heard us talk about the red-green spectrum, then we'll put a link to an episode in the show notes where we go through the red-green spectrum and what that actually means in terms of the meeting needs, why it's so important for us to understand the difference between red ways of meeting our needs and green ways of meeting our needs, so that we can start to do it in more green ways, because the more green the ways are, the better, and the more fulfilling the way of meeting our needs will be. So very, very superficial, like very kind of top level. Red spectrum ways of meeting our needs are like the TV dinner way of meeting the needs. They're the ways that are going to be draining. They're going to be, it might stop you from feeling hungry momentarily, but it's not actually going to satiate the hunger that's underneath it. So if you had something that has got no real nutritional value to it, yeah, you might not be hungry initially, but you're probably going to be hungry again very shortly afterwards, because you haven't really met the need that's underneath the surface. And green ways of meeting needs on the green end of the spectrum is ways that I described, like the whole food, home cooked, nutritionally balanced way of meeting needs, which is like, not only does it stop you from being hungry, it actually is going to satiate the hunger underneath it, and it's actually going to leave you fuller for longer. So it's going to mean that you're not going to need to meet the need in another 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes, an hour. You're probably going to be able to last several hours with that way of doing it. And so when we're talking about this, the disempowering ways of meeting our needs are red ways of meeting our needs, and the empowering ways of meeting our needs are green ways of meeting our needs. Now, we're going to focus for these first 4 episodes on the disempowering ways of meeting needs. Now, I can see people being like, well, why are you focusing on that? Like, wouldn't it be more helpful to focus on the other side of it? Well, yeah, but we need to be able to identify when the things that we're doing are disempowering. We need to be able to notice those patterns, because it's only when we notice the behaviors and patterns and habits that we have that we're able to then start to shift them, because we go, I can see that. That's a disempowering way of meeting my need. How do I now move it to being a more empowering way of meeting our need? So we tend to be aware of some approaches to meeting or masking our needs that are disempowering. So if we're meeting our needs, we're trying to meet the need that's underneath it. If we're masking it, we're trying to basically numb it or avoid it or mask the feeling of it being unmet, so that we don't feel that it's being unmet, but it doesn't actually meet the need in any way, shape, or form. So let me give you a couple of examples. So, or just an example. So some people smoke to feel calm, for example, and we're aware that there is a negative impact to choosing to smoke. We know that there are most of us know that there are negative health impacts to smoking.
I don't know
what that was either.
No, it doesn't.
No. We're just two in each other's heads. You get what I was trying to say. And so we get that there are some ways, and so a disempowering way of meeting our needs is basically a way of meeting or trying to meet our needs that's going to have some negative impacts to us and probably other people around us as well. But the interesting thing is there are lots of ways of meeting our needs that are disempowering that we aren't currently aware of. So in 1968, there was a chap called Dr. Stephen Cartman. He came up with what he calls the drama triangle as a way of mapping destructive interactions. So you may have heard of the drama triangle before. If you haven't, we're going to pop it up on the screen now so you can have a little look at it. We'll I'm sure we'll do that again a little bit later. Now, we use the drama triangle as a basis for explaining the disempowering dynamics that are common when people interact. But what you'll notice, if you know anything about the drama triangle, is that our descriptions are much more in depth than the original ones. And we obviously describe everything in a needs context, which gives more nuance to it and helps you to understand it a little bit better. So in Dr. Cartman's original model, back up on the screen right now, he refers to three positions on the triangle as the victim, persecutor, and rescuer. Now, when we put this in the drama triangle in a needs context, we refer to the victim approach, the persecutor approach, and the rescuer approach. And the reason for this is what's being described in each of these triangle positions is an approach to dealing with situations and with a corresponding set of behaviors that are engaged with when taking that approach. So we're not saying that you are a victim, you are a persecutor, you are a rescuer. What we're saying is that when you are engaging with a certain set of behaviors, that is taking a victim approach to the situation, a persecutor approach to the situation, or a rescuer approach to the situation. And the reason we do this is that when Cartman's model is applied with the original labels, what it does is it often conflates actual objective harm and victimhood and the relative positions of people involved in that with the mentalities or approaches that people can connect to in order to address the situational circumstances that they're in, which may not be related to actual harm or victimhood, which is not only unhelpful, but it actually can often lead to victim blaming by focusing on the mindset or behaviors of someone who is an objective victim. So we have to be able to distinguish between somebody who is an objective victim and somebody who is choosing to take a victim approach to how they're dealing with it. You can be an objective victim and still be taking an empowered approach to how you're dealing with that situation. Or you can be somebody who hasn't been an objective victim at all and is taking a victim approach in how you're dealing with it. So the reason for that is that when we focus on the mindset or behaviors of someone who is an objective victim, what we end up doing is, rather than focusing on the responsibility, behaviors, and choices of the person who has actually harmed them, we then start to go, oh, well, this person's a victim. And if you talk about the original drama triangle, it's like, well, this person's victim in this drama triangle. Well, yes, technically true, but they are actually also, they're an objective victim. They have been harmed by somebody else. And it's so important for us to be able to name and put the responsibility on the person who is doing the harming, not on the person who is taking that approach when we're talking about objective victimhood. And what this means is it doesn't provide an appropriate pathway to an accountability, healing, and justice in the instances where there has been some objective harm or victimhood. What I mean by objective harm is, like, we can see this is like if somebody walked up and punched somebody else in the face. Objectively, somebody has harmed somebody else in that situation. Is that person, in Dr. Cartman's model, they go, oh, well, that person's the victim. But then because of the associated behaviors associated with that, well, oh, is that the reason that they were punched in the face? No, that's not how this works. They are the objective victim of somebody else's bad behavior. And we need to put responsibility on the person who's done the punching here, not on the person who's been punched. And then what we need to look at in the context of this is to say, okay, now how are we approaching dealing with this situation? Are we still coming from a victim approach, or actually are we coming at it from a more empowering approach, even though we're naming, yeah, I got punched in the face there, that's not okay, this is a problem. So it's important to recognize that when we're talking about the drama triangle, all of the positions in this triangle, so both the victim, persecutor, and rescuer, usually have chronically unmet needs. And when we talk about chronically unmet needs, that means unmet needs that happened over a long period of time. This is something that they've been continually having unmet needs for a long period of time. They are coming from a victim approach at core. So i.e. that every single one of these positions is first and foremost a victim approach. Their core feeling tends to be anxiety related, and their focus is on the problems of the situation. And we'll get to why that's an issue in a little bit later on. Now, it's important to say in this context is that it's still possible to be a victim and to not have all of those things be true, and to actually be in the other shape that we're talking about. So it is a triangle when we're talking about the drama triangle, but there's another shape for the empowering way of approaching things.
So now that we've talked about the drama triangle, when it comes to the empowering way to meet our needs, we tend to have an idea of the ways that are going to meet our needs that are empowering. but there are a lot of ways that us meeting our needs that are empowering that we're not currently aware of. So like we can do things and know that, yes, I feel empowered, but there's a lot of things that we're doing and we don't even realize those are actually in this shape, not the drama triangle. To help us understand this better, we use the ton empowerment triangle, so the universal needs empowerment ecosystem, as this is almost always at the root of the way that we meet our needs that are empowering. So all of the positions in the empowerment ecosystem exist within the context of community: local, extended, systematic, global, etc. So it's community as a whole in all of its forms. The three positions in the empowerment ecosystem are the creator approach, the supporter approach, and the contributor approach. Now, as you notice, there's 3 in the drama triangle, and there are 3 in this shape as well. And that will come into play a little bit later.
Well, it's important to say here that sometimes people think that's because one maps onto the other. That's not actually true when it comes to this. Like, that's part of the reason that it's not like, oh, here's a triangle and there's a triangle. And there are people who have said, oh, well, there's this triangle and then there's this triangle, which is a better way of doing it. And the reason that we're not going to describe what the shape is, we'll put it on the screen right now so you can see it, is that, as you'll see, it's not a standard shape. It's a triangle within a circle, and that circle is indicative of the wider community that all of those positions are a part of. And so it's really important to recognize, like, don't look for like, oh, this one is this one in this shape, because that's not how this works when it comes to the empowerment ecosystem.
All the positions in the empowerment ecosystem have consistently met needs. They're all a creator approach at core. The core feeling is want. So what does the person want more of? And their focus is on their outcomes. So in order to be able to move from the disempowering to empowering, we need to be able to identify where we are in the disempowering, and know how to move where we want to be in the empowering. So this is why we first focus on the disempowering, so you can learn to spot these patterns both within yourself and others. And I promise you will see both more than you have ever thought possible. There was a point where I was just seeing the positions and I was like, and most of them were in the red coloring. Yes. And then we're going to cover the empowering, so you can learn how to move between the two. And that's why it's important, because one isn't directly related to the other, but you need to know the disempowerment aspect of it, so you, like we said, you can recognize it and be able to move over into the places that are within this other green shape.
Yeah, I wanted just to share a quick little anecdote here before we kind of move on to the next little section. When I took Serena's husband through this content first, I was explaining, like, anybody who's been watching or listening to us for a while now knows that I have a guilty pleasure, which is trashy television. And I was explaining to him that there was a scene that I'd seen in one of the trashy shows I watched, where all of these positions were very apparent. And I think it was probably about an hour and a half to 2 hours we took watching a sequence of TV, which probably was about 10 to 15 minutes long. And literally I was pausing it every second to maybe 5 seconds. And I'm like, okay, you see this person's in this position now, and this person's in this position now. And then I play a bit more, and then I pause it again. Okay, now this person is flipped. They're now in this position, and this person is now in this position. And then I play a little bit more, and they would flip again. I'm like, okay, so this, and literally we spent hours breaking this down in one conversation. So when Serena says you'll start to see it everywhere, it's not as simple as just, oh, this person is in a victim approach, this person is in a persecutor approach. No. Chances are they'll be in that approach for like a split second, and then they might switch to something else, and then they might switch to something else. So you are going to start to notice these happening everywhere.
And that switch is really important, because we tend to put somebody, we're like, okay, they're in this role, and then we frame things based on the fact they're in this role, and you see people running around these shapes just like getting themselves worn out, and it's fascinating, among other things. Fascinating.
So let's start off by breaking down the positions of the drama triangle from a needs perspective. We're going to begin off with the victim approach, because as I said before, All of these positions, first and foremost, are a victim approach position. So it is extremely important to reiterate here that when we're talking about these aspects, we are talking about how someone is approaching a situation. There is a difference between someone who has been victimized by someone or a situation who is an actual victim and someone who is taking a victim approach to how they are handling dealing with the situation. When we talk about someone who has been victimized, it's important that we're talking about actual victimization. So, for example, i.e. someone who's had one or more of their universal needs compromised or negatively impacted due to the behavior of someone else. We're not talking about people who have a perception of harm, i.e. their needs are no longer being prioritized over or by others, situations in which your feelings, needs, comfort or opinion are no longer being centered as it wasn't appropriate for them to be centered in the first place, or because others are no longer meeting needs of yours that were never their responsibility, they were yours. So it's really important to recognize, like, when we're talking about actual victimization and when we're talking about the victim approach, we're talking about the victim approach here. And it's also really important to recognize that when we are talking about actual victimization, that we're talking about actual victimization, not perceived victimization.
I just take that in. We are not talking about the perception of harm. And I'm going to read through those again because it's so important. It took me a while to really understand what the difference was between an approach and being objectively being a victim. So we're not talking about people who their needs are no longer being prioritized over other situations in which your feelings, needs, comfort, or opinion are no longer being centered as it was not appropriate for them to be in the first place, or because others are no longer meeting needs of yours that were never their responsibility. They were yours. One more time on that last one. Or because others are no longer meeting needs of yours that were never their responsibility. They were yours. That one right there is huge.
Yes. And when we talk about your feelings, needs, comfort, or opinion being centered, what we mean is that being the focus of everything, or around which everything else is going on. So it's like we're having a conversation and the only thing being talked about is your needs, your feelings, your comfort, your opinion, as opposed to there being like a reasonable split of okay, this is how I feel. Oh, and now this is how you feel. And that's how that person feels. So that's what we talk about. When we talk about those things being centered, we mean those are being treated as if they are the center of the universe in the context of what's going on. So what is the victim approach? Well, there are a number of different things that are break down elements of the victim approach. So the first is the victim approach someone who's in the victim approach tends to have this feeling of no choice or being powerless. They tend to want to be rescued. They want someone else to come and fix things. They tend to believe the power for change is outside of themselves. The primary characteristics of someone who is in the victim approach are their needs are unmet, often chronically so. Obviously, that's what I said before, is that over a long period of time. Their focus is almost always on their problems. Their predominant feeling is anxiety or is anxiety related. They often have severely unmet value need, i.e. they tend to have low self-esteem or low self-worth. They tend to feel like they have no choice. And I want to note here, there is a difference between having no choice and not liking the choice that we have. Those are not the same things. And when you feel like you have no choice, you tend to drop into the victim approach. They feel powerless to affect change in the situation or in their life. They believe the power to affect change is outside of themselves or doesn't exist at all. They often don't see that they have any responsibility, even when it is theirs. They can often believe that everything is somebody else's responsibility, or they may take over responsibility even when the responsibility isn't theirs. They often have the perception that everything is my fault. And sometimes they can flip between those two. And they often want to be rescued from their situation and or for somebody else to come or something else to come along and fix it for them. And as I said, this is not about approaching, this is about approaching things in life with a victim approach mindset. This is not the same as actually being victimized and naming this and saying, I've been a victim of this situation in order to heal, change, or seek justice. This is a valid and necessary part of the healing process, and it's actually part of the creator approach, which is part of the empowerment ecosystem, which we're going to get to in a later episode.
So what are the ways some of the victim approach manifests? As we go through the examples, notice which ones you recognize or that resonate with your past behavior patterns. The victim approach can manifest in a wide variety of different ways, and sometimes multiple of the following behaviors can be present at one time. It's important to note that these behaviors don't always mean that someone is adopting the victim approach, depending on the circumstances. But these are some common behaviors that can indicate that a victim approach is present. Another important thing to notice or to note is that being in the victim approach can sometimes be meeting needs in ways that are ineffective and drain our needs more than they will meet them, which is counterproductive to what we're doing. Be masking our unmet needs, which will often prevent us from doing something to begin meeting the need and can lead to addictive behaviors being formed. These options, in the absence of knowing other ways to meet your needs, can feel preferable to not having them met at all. So, this is not about us criticizing or judging ourselves for engaging in these behaviors. It's about recognizing that they are not serving us well and choosing to do better in ways going forward. Also, it's important to note that most of these behaviors can be conscious and unconscious. This is an opportunity to spot these behaviors and therefore begin to learn how to shift them. And from my own personal experience going through this, in the beginning, I was like, oh, I do that. Oh, fuck, I do that. I do that. I do that. I did that. And we're all learning here. Like, don't, it's very hard to not go down that shame spiral, but take this as a learning, and now you know.
Yeah. And it's really important that, like, when we talk about they can be conscious or unconscious, it's like we can be aware that we're doing, or we can be unaware of it. We can be intending to do it. We can not be intending to do it. That doesn't change what we're doing. We just, and it's the fact that we're doing it that's going to be causing us harm and causing us problems. The other thing is that when we go through these things, it's helpful to look for, like, what are the things that you notice in yourself. And also, sometimes it can be easier to spot these behaviors in other people first, especially fictional stuff. Like if you go on, as I said, if you look at, go onto TV shows, or if you're watching a movie and start to notice these patterns in other people, once you start to notice them in other people, when you have that moment, then start to reflect, okay, where are the ways in which I do that? Because sometimes it can be a little uncomfortable to name, oh shit, I do that. Oh yeah, that was me. Yeah, I've done that too. Sometimes that like it being one step removed, it being outside of ourselves, makes it easier to see. And when we do that, it's so important to not end there and to instead, like, look back and go, okay, where are the moments that I've done that as well? So what are some of the examples of behaviors that are indicating that we are, or probably, in a victim approach? So the first is wallowing. That is basically feeling sorry for ourselves or staying stuck in our negative emotions to try to get other people to meet our needs. As we've talked about previously, there is a difference between I'm wallowing in my needs, I am just sitting in them because the sitting in them in some way seems like it might be meeting our needs, and feeling our needs in order to heal, in order to move through them to get to the other side. There's a distinct difference between those two. Sympathy seeking is another one, which is engaging in behaviors to try to get other people to feel sorry for us in order to try to get them to meet our needs. Believing that there's no way out. Believing there's no way out of our victimhood as a way of trying to protect or meet needs. So, for example, because we're familiar with a situation, it meets our security need in red spectrum ways, or we're trying to avoid having hope and then losing it, or we're trying to avoid the discomfort of change. So you might think it's too difficult, it'll never work, it's too late, believing there's too far to go, it'll be too much effort to make it better, or just giving up, having that fuck it moment where you resign yourselves to the fact that life is going to be awful. So if you believe there's no way out, a lot of the time that will be, if you're in that mindset where you were focused on the problem and it feels like there's no way out of it, chances are we may be in the victim approach. People pleasing, big one. Prioritizing other people and their needs as a way to try to avoid our needs being further compromised, or to try to get them to meet our needs for us, or as a way of trying to mask our unmet needs or try to meet our needs in ways that really aren't very helpful. Self-devaluing, thinking, believing, or saying I'm not good enough or I don't deserve better. That's an indicator. Victim bonding, so trying to connect with others through our perceived or actual shared victimhood in order to try to get our needs met. So we're doing this as a way of trying to meet our needs. And I think that's a really important thing to recognize with all of this. All of this is being done subconsciously with good intentions. Like, we're trying to get our needs met, we're just using really shitty strategies to getting there. So again, like, this is not like I'm a masochist, I'm doing this because this is crap. I'm doing this because there's a part of me that believes this is going to be good for me. It's just that part of me is wrong. Basically, it's just got the wrong idea. That's not the best way of doing it. It just doesn't know any other way at this point in time. Excuse finding, so finding and focusing on all the ways that we can't do anything to help or to change our situation. Attention seeking, trying to get attention through either positive or perceived or negatively perceived behavior to try to get our needs met. Hinting, so alluding to issues, sometimes very cryptically, so that other people will ask questions or get drawn in as a way of trying to get them to meet our needs. This is one that I know that came up. Serena brought this up when we were talking about, like, when people have this, like, they put like a vague Facebook status where it's like, it doesn't rain, it pours. That's it.
Yeah.
And that's that like hinting. It's like, oh, well, anyone reading that's going to go, well, there's something going on, obviously. And normally that encourages people to come towards us, and that other people coming towards us sometimes can help us to feel our needs are being met. Support baiting. This is enacting behaviors to try to get other people to meet our needs for us rather than asking for the support that we want or need. So this is like, I'm trying to do something to get you to give me support, not actually just ask for support and say, hey, can I get this support? Sulking, big one. Seen this so many times. Just sulking to try to get people to ask questions or to get drawn into meeting our needs. Clinging, becoming needy or clingy to try to get other people to meet our needs. Whining, that playing up issues to try to get other people to meet our needs. Like, often this is done through sounds or tone of voice. It's like, oh, please. Oh, come on. Like, come on, please. Like, it feels icky just doing that. But that is that thing. It's another way of trying to pull other people into meeting our needs, because it gives a lot of these things, they're giving the impression that we can't do it for ourselves. Mm-hmm. And so we're trying to draw other people into doing it for us. Complaining about our problems to try to get other people to meet our needs. Now, this is a point in which it's really important to say that there are sometimes this is one of these examples where you can be complaining about something not because you're engaging with the victim approach, but because something has happened which is not okay, and part of the your attempt to create something different is you complaining about what's happened, but you're doing it for a purpose. You're doing it to get to the other side of what you want on the other side of it, versus complaining about the problems to try to draw other people in to try to meet our needs. It's another form of sort of wallowing, if you like. Being pessimistic, so being quote unquote negative about almost everything to try to get other people to meet our needs. Like, I call this like the Eeyore effect. It's like, I'm fine, nothing's going right, like that kind of energy. Mm-hmm. We've all been in a situation where we know that moment where it's like somebody's like, oh yeah, and it feels icky, rather than saying, well, this is happening right now, like I could really use some support with that. Very, very different approach. Apprehensiveness, so being apprehensive or indecisive to try to get other people to meet our needs, either through them making decisions for us or by trying to elicit a response from the other person. Martyring ourselves, that's suffering or self-sacrificing ourselves as a vehicle to try to get our needs met. I try to meet our value need, like I'm like look how important I am and look how good a person I am because I'm sacrificing myself from everybody else. That's a really crappy strategy to try and meet our value need, or to try to get other people to meet our needs for us. Like, this is one I used to do a lot, where I would burn myself out. Like, I'm the only person who can do it. Like, I'll do it. Don't worry about me. You go on ahead, kind of thing. To try to then get other people it's a bait. We're fishing for somebody else to try and meet our needs at the moment, and through doing that. Withdrawing, so pulling back from other people without communicating to try to get them to follow us, to get them to meet our needs. That also can take the form of radio silence, just like completely shutting off from somebody. Sucking it up, so believing that we need to suck it up and just keep going no matter how many hits we take. So we might be trying to get our needs met by being seen as the strong one. So again, that could be a value need thing. That often it's like powering through. And there's a difference between, again, that recognizing that there are moments where, okay, short term, I just have to get through this as a short term coping strategy to get to the point where I can then support my needs effectively, and using this as a long-term needs meeting strategy. Like, this is not a good needs meeting strategy in the long term. This is the reason that we say that there's nuance with this. Like, it doesn't always mean this thing. This could be a conscious choice of like, okay, I'm gonna suck it up for the next 20 minutes to get through this thing, and then I'm gonna go and cry in a heap, or I'm gonna go and do the things that I need to do to support myself. And I'm consciously, intentionally doing that because that's what's going to create the outcome that I want.
Some of them are kind of difficult in that sense, because when we go like withdrawing, that's something that I do fairly frequently for myself. When things just get to be too much, I am much better at communicating, and when I withdraw, it isn't for people to come, like, I'm not withdrawing to get people to, like, you know, to bait people. I'm withdrawing because I just simply can't. And I'll come back and be like, hey, went somewhere for a minute in my own, you know, my own mind and my own space. And being conscious of the fact there are sometimes I have withdrawn and I'm like, why? All right, am I doing this for myself, or do I need to reach out to somebody and be like, hey, you know, I'm feeling this way, and, you know, like, if I find myself getting upset that nobody's reached out to me when I don't want anybody to reach out to me, then there might be something different going on behind the scenes in my being.
Right. And there's also a difference between withdrawing, which is like, I'm not communicating, I'm just going to disappear. Like Irish goodbye style. Oh, again, we should probably check the origins of that, and make sure that's not a problematic term. And instead saying, I am intentionally going to take some time on my own right now. I'm going to let people know, because like, there is a big difference between what you do now versus what you used to do many years ago. And as somebody who's known you for many years, I've experienced both. I've experienced that. I mean, Serena took ghosting to a whole new level. It was like poltergeisting. It was like, whoa, okay. Where'd she, like, I'm sure, wasn't there someone called Serena? Didn't we know someone called Serena? I'm sure she was around at one point. Like, and that could be for months at a time. Like, it could happen for extended periods of time. That was withdrawing. That was, and it may be sometimes because you're trying to pull other people in. But again, it may also be, I don't have a choice. I've got to cut myself off from everybody else. Poor me. And I'm going into that wallowing space. And sometimes these things will show up like at the same time, where it's like, I'm withdrawing and I'm also wallowing and I'm also doing these other things. They're victim approach situations. And I think that's what you used to do. I can't deal with it. Yes. I've just got to, and there's no thought to, what is this going to mean for my relationships? Like, how would I feel if I was on the other side of this? Am I being conscious about this because I'm wanting to create something by doing this? I think that's what happens now, where now you're like, actually, I need some time and space for myself to deal with some of the stuff that I'm dealing with in order that I can come back on the other side of this. But there's a mindfulness in how you're doing it and an intentionality about how you're doing it. Like, Serena these days, if she's going to disappear off the face of the earth, she'll let me know she's disappearing off the face of the earth. So I'm like, cool, she's going to take some time for her. Awesome. I do it too. Like when I was in the UK and I went to Glastonbury, I was like, told everybody, hey, I'm disappearing off the face of the earth for a few days. 3 people had my contact information, and those 3 people knew one app that they could get hold of me on if it was an emergency. But aside from that, I wasn't contacting anybody else. Not because I was withdrawing, because I was intentionally going, this is something I'm doing for myself. And so, whether this is something you're intentionally doing and how you go about doing it can make all the difference. And it's like, what are you focused on? Like, remember, like, what are the core elements of the victim approach? I think when you were withdrawing previously, you were focused on the problems. You were in chronically unmet needs. You were, the core feeling was anxiety. It was a reaction to the anxiety you were feeling, and it probably created more anxiety because it was like, oh God, now what happens if I do want to reach out again? Like, then I've got to explain what's happened. Like there was so many things. And now I don't think that you have when you're doing that, I think it is coming from the aspects of the creator approach or part of the empowerment ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Faking is also, it's like faking a situation which is perceived as being worthy of support as an attempt to get others to come and meet our needs. And I mean, like, as people who watch some interesting documentaries, we have seen some massive examples of this. And like, it doesn't have to be as extreme as those. Like, there are some where it's like, oh wow, like there was one of the ones I've seen, I don't think that you've seen it, called, it was a docuseries called Anatomy of Lies, which was about one of the writers on Grey's Anatomy. And like, she was faking having cancer at one point. She faked a whole bunch of things.
Scamanda.
Oh, is that?
I believe it's the same. There's another documentary called Scamanda, and it's about that same situation. You're watching it, and it's like, are you like there are some drastic situations that people fake to get the support. It just,
and it's so important to recognize this doesn't have to look like that big thing. Like, it doesn't have to be this big thing. It may be that you exaggerating a situation, like you trip over something and you you make out like you're more hurt than you actually are. That laugh meant something.
Yeah, no, I just got an image. There's a Family Guy image, Peter Griffin on the ground with his knee. He trips and he's like, and it goes on like it's part of like the drama that they create. It goes on forever, and it's funny to me because I've seen that in real life, not necessarily in that kind of, you know, formatting, but it's just as ridiculous when I watch it now, because I'm like seeing a person faking it and knowing it's like, oh, you're in victim approach, aren't you? And then like, it becomes almost comical. Like, I hate to say it like
it's
that,
like
but
one of the examples that I think that that represents this like really really well, it's a good metaphor for this, is I don't know whether you, like, as somebody who is from England, I've seen a lot of soccer, or as we call it, football, over the years. And a lot of the time what will end up happening is that the players will fake an injury to try to get either a penalty against the other team. They'll try and get a yellow card for another player or a red card for another player. And it's a very simple metaphor. It's like, I'm faking this injury to try to get my needs met by trying to get a benefit from the fact that I have been injured. And the amount of like, I mean, it reminds me of like the really, really bad soap opera acting that they used to be, where it's like, like, you know what I mean? As opposed to like good drama, like makes you feel something. Like bad soap opera acting makes you laugh and be like, what the fuck are you doing? And that's very much like where it's like they do these massive dives and these big performances, and then either they don't get the response they want, or they do get the response they want, or nobody notices. The funny situation for me is when they're writhing around on the floor and then nobody notices and they just get up and run off, kind of thing. And that always happens. It's like yeah, I mean, literally they just they walk off like nothing has happened. And this is a really good like metaphor for what faking can look like. And sometimes it is said, we tend to give some kind of extreme examples so that you can understand what we're talking about. And it's really important to recognize these things happen in very minute ways as well. They don't have to be these big extreme versions of things. Fortressing is like putting mental, emotional, or physical walls up with our closest people. Barricading with no communication, which is very different to communicating boundaries as a way of trying to meet our needs. For example, as an attempt to feel safer, so to meet our security need, or to try to mask our unmet needs, i.e. if other people can't see my struggle, I can deny the fact that it's even there. So again, this is another version of like, I'm putting barriers up. And we've talked about this on previous podcast episodes. There is a difference between a boundary and a barrier. Fortressing is about putting up barriers. Boundaries tend to be much more about the empowerment ecosystem approaches. My brain blanked for a second. So another one which we've seen a lot of is faking positivity. So forcing or faking positivity as an attempt to mask our unmet needs or try to force them into being met. Toxic positivity, if you haven't seen our episode on toxic positivity and how harmful it is, we'll put the link in the show notes. Very, very problematic. Not just for you, but also it kind of it gives this impression that everybody should be taking this approach when crappy things happen in their lives. And the truth of the matter is, it often blocks us from getting our needs met. It does not support us in getting our needs met because it blocks us from our emotional experience and expression need. Performing the role that we think will have other people meet our needs for us, or we think will meet our needs. No idea, like that doesn't sound familiar at all. I basically spent the first parts of my life in permanent performance mode.
I have some images of people that just kind of popped up into my face. I'm like, well, that's an interesting fucking cast.
Yes. Ta-da!
Performing again, always backfires too. I'll let you know that, like, eventually you're gonna want, like,
if you're using it as a long-term needs meeting strategy. Again, sometimes performing as a short-term coping strategy to get to the point where you can meet your needs in more empowering ways, that's a different thing. Like a really good example was, I wasn't feeling well the other day. I was pretty sure that I had food poisoning. I didn't think that I was contagious in any way, shape, or form. And I had an event that I had to be out at. And I went and I performed for the few hours that I was at that event because I knew the impact to our organization and to my needs of not doing so. It was a short-term coping strategy. And the second I was done, I was back home, I was in bed, I was resting, I was doing all the things that I needed to do in order to be able to support my needs. So again, short-term coping strategy, not necessarily a problem. Long-term needs meeting strategy, that's a problem. So next one is egoing. So performing confidence as a way of masking unmet value needs. So this also can sometimes you'll notice that some of these they will also sit into other roles. So again, it's like you're performing confidence as a way of masking your unmet value needs. Is overperforming confidence as a way of responding to insecurity and a lack of self-worth is often what we see of arrogance. So like if we're performing confidence and it's not really negatively impacting anybody else, then it's victim approach. If, however, we are engaging in it in a way where we're trying to get our needs met by performing this kind of superiority, like I'm more confident than you, I'm better than you, again, you're performing this superiority over another individual to try to mask your own unmet value need, that will be persecutor approach, because that is where you are negatively impacting somebody else's needs as a way of trying to meet your own. Miming. This is about centering ourselves. That could be physically centering, emotionally centering, verbally centering. So when we talk about verbally centering, we're talking about like if you're having a conversation and you're always bringing it back to yourself and your experience. And again, there's nuance with all of this, because sometimes, like with neurodivergent folks, sometimes sharing about an experience that you've had is a way of showing, look, I understand what you're going through. It's a way of connecting and empathizing with somebody else. And then other people, they just want to make it all about them and they're wanting to ignore what the other person said. So again, nuance when it comes to this. And when we're miming, we're doing this in most situations to try to get our needs met. Hot messing, so the person who creates issues for themselves to try to get their needs met, either through the issue or through having other people come and save them from their hot messing. Imposturing, being afraid that we will get quote unquote found out as not being worthy of what we have in our life and that our needs will be compromised as a result. Self-sabotaging, so sabotaging ourselves to create the perception of victimhood to try to get other people to meet our needs. So it's like you do the self-sabotaging and be like, oh no, look what's happened, poor me, someone come along and make everything better for me. That's what we're talking about in that situation. This next one, I actually think that this is really more of a persecutor approach than it is a victim approach. But I think there are elements to it that can kind of go in both directions. And this is weaponizing competence. This is about being quote unquote useless at things and making little or no effort to try to learn or improve to try to get somebody else to meet our needs. So it's like weaponizing incompetence, which is like this kind of helplessness, which is like, oh, I don't know. I'm not good at this. Like, you do it kind of thing. That is, but even that, because you're then trying to get somebody else to do it and you're weaponizing it against somebody else and it's going to negatively impact their needs, it's still going to end up being persecutor approach as well, which you'll understand a little better in the next episode when we get to that. But this is what I mean. Like sometimes these things can go, they can fall into more than one category depending on the nuance of the situation.
Another thing is proving, constantly trying to prove ourselves to get our needs met or to try to get others to meet them for us. Paralysis, not knowing what to do, so doing nothing rather than trying to learn or get support with figuring out what can be done to meet our needs. And that one's really like that one. I feel like that came about a little bit later in when we were doing this, and it comes up quite often. Somebody being like, oh, I don't know, I don't know, and then like I used to be. We're gonna get into rescuer later. Somebody who would jump into that and. Now realizing like there's, I guess I want to be very specific on the fact like there is diagnoses that could cause you to kind of get like a mental physical paralysis. We're not talking about that. We're talking about somebody who's spun up in their own shit so much that they're like, I can't do anything, so I'm going to do nothing. And that's just what it's going to be.
Yeah, there's a couple of things I just want to add to this. The first thing is I'm like, this is a note for us. We need to change the name of this one because I'm just realizing that's an ableist term. So we need to rename this, which we will do going forward. It's again recognizing that there's a difference between I am being in the creator approach with respect to how I'm dealing with the fact that I don't know what to do, and we'll get to what that looks like a little bit later, or being in the victim approach, which is like, I'm focused on the problem, I'm caught up in anxiety, there's like, I'm focused on the fact there's nothing I can do about this. Like, it's like how we are approaching this that puts us into the victim approach with respect to this. Like, we all have moments where it's like, I don't fucking know. No clue. And it's okay to have that moment of like, and then choose how you approach that moment. And then choosing how you approach it is the thing that will put you in the empowerment ecosystem.
I was thinking maybe like stuck in the mud or quicksand, because you see people like getting stuck, like comical versions of quicksand. People sitting there like, oh, well, guess I'm going under, and just let himself slowly get sucked under it.
I don't know about you, but like from the cartoons I watched as a kid, I thought quicksand was going to be a way bigger issue in adult life than it actually is. Like, I've never had any experience of seeing it even. But you're right. It's like where it's like focused on like the problem is the quicksand. So I'm going to look down, and I end up then getting my head caught in it as well, as opposed to like, okay, what's around this? Like, is there someone I can shout help to? Is there a rope nearby? Is there I was going to say an animal, like this idea of a lizard coming back and going, can't help you, buddy, sorry. I meant like a horse or something that might be able to help pull you out. Like,
didn't you ever watch Legend? I mean, you can't do that. The horse goes under too.
Well, Never Ending Story I'm thinking of, because this is the same thought in my head.
Is that Never? I thought that was... I'll spend an hour trying to figure out which one it was, and it turns out to be like the Labyrinth or something. So, right. I know it's not the Labyrinth.
And just quickly going back to proving, like, this is one that shows up a lot where people are trying to prove their worth. And a lot of that trying to prove their worth comes from this chronically unmet value need. And like this, like, if I'm trying to do something to prove I'm worthy, if I'm trying to do something to prove I'm good at something, if I'm trying to do something to prove I'm deserving of something, or that I should earn something, every single one of those, almost exclusively. And yet there are going to be times when, okay, in the short term, I might need to demonstrate I have the skill set to be able to do something, to get a job, for example. Like, it's like that might be part of that interview process. I might need to demonstrate my skill set because they're looking for someone who has a specific skill set, and they need to demonstrate that I have that skill set. There's a very big difference between that and somebody who's constantly trying to do things to prove that they're good enough. And like, I see this so often, and a lot of people don't realize that that's what they're trying to do. It's like they're trying to prove themselves. It's like people pleasing a lot of the time, and proving. There's a lot of overlap between them. And it's like, look, if I prove that I'm good at this, if I prove that I'm invaluable, if I prove that you need me, then you're going to want me because I don't feel worthy of being wanted without it. So these like things show up in a lot of different ways. So look out for the subtle ways that they might show up, as well as the really obvious ones.
Another one is ignoring the issues that are creating the unmet needs as a way to avoid feeling them. So basically masking them. And this is something we're kind of taught to do, like as like conditioned to do as we grow up. It's like, oh, just ignore it. Okay, that could be good advice if like whatever's happening to you isn't impacting you on a severely negative level or a negative level at all, if it's something that you can't change, that you don't have a part of. But what we're talking about is ignoring something that you do have the power within you to change, and bringing it into the victim mode. Like,
well, even if you don't have the ability to change it, if you ignore it, it prevents you from processing it, which then means it's going to be negatively impacting you more. So like, even if it's something I can't do anything about, and that's what a lot of people do, is they go, well, I can't do anything about it, so I might as well just ignore it. And it's like, yeah, I can see the logic, but no, because if you ignore it, you prevent yourself from process and healing from the fact that from the thing that you couldn't do anything about. And instead, if you actually allow yourself to go, yeah, this happened, this is shitty, and I'm going to allow myself to feel how I feel about it, and I'm going to process how I feel about it, it means it's not impacting us in quite the same way.
And then you get to mosey on over to a different shape.
Yes.
This is one I used to do, and sometimes I still catching myself doing it. Distracting. So doing things to avoid acknowledging the issue or avoiding feeling the unmet needs. This is another form of masking. Bypassing is another one. Trying to avoid
just distracting, that can take so many forms, like obsessively working, obsessively exercising, like doing things almost, a lot of time there can be like a compulsiveness to it. Distracting might just be like scrolling social media on your phone, like something that distracts you from the feelings that are present that are indicating your unmet needs.
We've talked about it before on episodes. When Candy Crush comes out, that one right there, that's one of those things, and I'm immediately like, oh, and then I choose. Then it's like, do I want to do this for my own well-being at this point, or am I doing this because I need to deal with something else and I'm just trying to crush my candies instead? Another one is bypassing. So that's trying to avoid the issue creating the unmet needs by circumventing it and focusing on something else to avoid feeling the unmet needs. So this is another form of masking. You kind of get a theme here. There's a lot of masking going on in this victim approach. Another one is numbing. So engaging in behaviors to numb the feelings caused by the unmet needs. So you're just masking those feelings. They're not going anywhere. They're still there. When you're done numbing, they're going to pop back up and be like, hey, forgot about me.
Yeah, and addictive behaviors tend to fall into that category a lot. So if you're doing addictive behaviors, those addictions normally are being used to numb the unmet needs.
And that's addictive behaviors in their totality. Like I used to do that with shopping.
Yeah,
like,
great example.
Not going to feel this, going to buy myself something new. Achieving, trying to achieve a lot to try and mask our own feeling of victimhood and inadequacy, or as a way to try to meet our needs. Amplifying, acting to make our situations worse or to give the impression that they are, to try to get other people to meet our needs. Fucking hate this one. People do it all the time. Like, oh my God, I had the worst day ever. And oh my God, so many things happen. Then you hear about their day and it's like, you went to work? And they're like, oh my God, it was terrible. And yeah, maybe there were some things that were less than desirable, but there's one specific person that comes up when I think about this. And I'm like,
well, and I think there's a couple of different forms of amplifying. One is like exaggerating, like which it kind of falls into the faking category. And the other form is actually acting to make our situation worse. So doing things that are going to make the situations amplified in order to make them worthy of other people, like to feel like we're enough of a victim for someone to come along and rescue us from it.
That just sounds so sad. Hearing it come out of your mouth. Yes, it's totally true. And it just sounds sad. Like,
and I realize that just like saying that, it sounds like there might be judgment around that. And I think that a lot of it, that this is because like we recognize that we used to do these things and still sometimes catch ourselves doing these behaviors. Like that's not like, oh God, people who are doing this is sad. It's like, oh God, I used to do that. That's not supportive of me in any way, shape or form.
Our human conditioning is sad. That's what it is. Just like, because this is what we've been conditioned to do. Like, it's just
very much so.
And there's another option, which is why we're going to move through these quickly so we can get to the other. So absorbing, taking on everyone else's issues in a way of avoiding and facing our own unmet needs. This is a form of masking as well. And to try and get other people to meet our needs because of the extent of our pain due to everyone else's problems. So I feel like this one almost goes hand in hand with martyring a lot of times. But this is when you're like, you know, if Claire was going through something and I took on the weight of Claire's world on top of my world and made her like world the priority on top of it, it happens a lot, especially in familial relationships as well. Like you tend to absorb without even realizing you're absorbing. And then all of a sudden you're in somebody else's hole, but don't even realize it's somebody else's hole.
And again, there's a difference between like I care about Serena. If she's in pain, of course I'm going to feel that because I care about her and I don't want her to be in pain, and me taking on that pain as my own. There's a big difference there.
Spiraling, jumping from one issue to the next as a way of avoiding facing unmet needs in the present, another form of masking. Problem seeking, looking for an issue which will make us a victim as a way of trying to get our needs met by others. Busy being. Buzz. I still find myself sometimes with this one. Buzz. So this is cultivating busyness as an attempt to mask or avoid our unmet needs or trying to meet them. So like for an example, trying to meet our value need as a way to avoid the unmet needs that if we met would actually help our value need, and we wouldn't have to do any like hiding.
Well, and I think a lot of the time that busyness is like, look, like that we cultivating busyness as a way of trying to meet our value need, where it's like, look how important I am because I'm so busy. Like, it's like, look, like I'm essential to all these things because I'm the fact that I'm this busy means that I'm therefore really important to these things. Therefore, my value need is there, right? And it's like, and again, a lot of the time that also connects to the proving, where it's like I'm trying to prove that I am worthy by being busy and by making myself quote unquote indispensable to all these things.
And we're talking about all these problems, like this next one, just like, why would you do this? Rejecting solutions, rejecting any help, support, solutions, basically as a way of trying to get other people to meet our needs, wanting them to force help onto us. So like, oh, no, I can't. Oh, if you just insist. Or wanting our situation to get so bad that somebody else feels like they have to step in. And a lot of times this comes hand in hand with the rescuer approach, which we will get into later. Problem gathering, looking for and gathering a number of different, often smaller problems to try and make our life seem as bad as it can be to try and get other people to meet our needs for us. So this is, you don't feel like you have enough things going on. You start taking things from other people, other places, and making them your own issues.
Or even just creating them, or creating these little problems for yourself. Like, oh, look, this is a problem. Oh, look, that's a problem. Like, you don't even need to be gathering them from other people. It could just be that you're like how many times have you spoken, like, how are you doing? Oh, there's this, and there was 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 this. And it's like, and there's the difference between, like, there are days where I'm like, oh, fuck me, that's been a day. There's been this, and there's been this, and I'm sharing this to process it in order to get to the other side of it. Versus I'm looking for all these other problems so that my life looks awful, so you'll feel bad for me, so you'll do something about it.
Redirecting, taking somebody else's victimhood and redirecting it in order to place ourselves in the position of victim or more of a victim to try and get other people to meet our needs. Gaslighting our experience of issues as a way of avoiding or masking the needs that are unmet by those issues. This is kind of like avoiding in that same, like, oh, no, it's not, but this is like this doesn't exist. This isn't my life.
Yeah. And like, in order to do this, we need to be really clear on what gaslighting is. And we'll get into that more in the persecutor approach, because when we're gaslighting somebody else, like there are a specific set of behaviors, but it's basically acting to undermine or to have somebody question their own experience. So self-gaslighting is when we are acting to question our own experience and our own memory and our own understanding and knowledge of things and situations, where it's like, oh no, that, like, it's like, wow, that was shitty. I'm like, oh no, it wasn't really that bad. Like that, it's that, like, where we're either minimizing or the self-gaslighting that's like, no, that didn't happen. Like, wait, what? I was listening, I saw this video the other day, and it was kind of like, I was conflicted on how I felt about it, because it was, you'll understand in a minute. Like, this girl, basically, she was calling her abusive ex-partner, and who used to gaslight her all the time. And she was recording the conversation, and she was gaslighting him throughout this entire conversation. So she called him and acted as if they'd never broken up, and be like, oh, how you doing, baby? Like, how's your day? What do you fancy for dinner tonight? And everything. He's like, why are you calling me? And then, like, it would get to a certain point where he would be like, I don't, and then she'd flip, and then she'd be like, why did you call me? And he's like, I thought you called me. And she's like, no, you called, like, why are you calling me? We broke up, like, why? And then he'd be like, oh my God, like, I'm like, and then she would get so far, and then she'd be like, oh no, baby, I love you. And it was such an extreme, I think the reason that I appreciated watching it was because it was so extreme a version. It was very obvious to see she was acting to undermine his understanding of the situation. Now, I don't believe that retaliatory abuse is like, I don't think, like, if she's out of that situation and that moving on, I don't think that doing that is helpful or healthy for her or anybody involved in the situation, because I think that that's not about creating what is good for you. There's a kind of revenge aspect feels like there's present, and it's like she's trying to meet her needs by compromising his needs, which is not a selfless way of meeting needs. there's a lot of nuance in this. So I'm not just saying this is a good thing or a bad thing. This is why I was uncertain how I felt about it. But I think the reason there was a part of me that appreciated was because it was so obvious and it was so blatant. And you could see that, like, by the end of it, this guy was like, I think I'm, like, I mean, he used the C word, I'm pretty sure. Like, he was like, I think I'm going crazy. And obviously we don't use that word because it's an ableist slur. And yet you could see him unraveling from one phone call, which went to from one extreme to the other. And so I think that it's really important to understand what gaslighting actually is. It's one of those therapized terms, like those therapy terms that's getting bandied about, and people are using it in lots of different situations. Like, well, that's not actually gaslighting, that's just disagreeing with somebody. So it's really important we understand what gaslighting is, so that when we are talking about self-gaslighting, we understand we are acting to undermine our knowledge of the situation. Yeah.
Another one is blaming. We're on a delay, so if it's you, like, I'm trying not to talk over. Another one is blaming. So consistently blaming other people and situations for issues, basically giving them the responsibility and with it the power, as a way of trying to get other people to meet our needs by being further in victimhood without looking for where we are responsible or where we have the power to affect the change.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in. So blame is basically normally about indicating wrongness, as opposed to looking for accountability or responsibility or change. And that blame, that wrongness, is normally about focus on the problem, the anxiety-based feelings. So that's normally a victim approach. You can still hold somebody responsible and say, actually, this is your responsibility as a part of creating something that can be part of the empowerment ecosystem. Sorry, just thought it might be helpful for me to jump in there.
Yes, thank you for that. I need to separate my paragraphs because all of a sudden my eye jumped to a different part. I'm like, that's not where I am. The realness of it all, everyone. The next one is appropriately self-blaming. So consistently blaming ourselves for everything, even when we do not have responsibility. And this is done as a way of trying to get other people to meet our needs by being further in victimhood. Again, blame is usually about appointing wrongness rather than looking for accountability, responsibility, or change. Mm-hmm. Masking, we talk about it a whole lot in this one. And simply, it's either trying to pretend there is nothing wrong to try and meet the needs by being seen as successful, strong, capable, or trying to avoid acknowledging for ourselves what's really going on as an attempt to mask the unmet needs.
And it's important to say here that masking is a lot of the time a behavior that happens within, like, for example, neurodivergent folks, which there's very different reasons that we may be masking. This is like, if this is just, we are trying to do this as an attempt to try to get our unmet needs met, or by trying to mask our unmet needs so we don't have to deal with our unmet needs. There's a very difference between that and masking to try to be socially accepted, because the way that most people operate is different to the way that neurodivergent people operate. So it's important to recognize that this is a term that's used in different places. There's a very specific meaning here.
Mm-hmm. Avoiding facing what is happening as a way to mask the unmet needs present, or as an ineffective attempt to meet needs. So we're talking about it's a poor strategy to try and feel more secure by avoiding what is making us feel insecure. Addictive behaviors, the use of addictive tendencies to try and meet our needs in red spectrum ways, or to mask the feeling of unmet needs. Controlling. This is a big one. Trying to control things around us as a way of trying to meet our needs or mask the feelings of our unmet needs. So trying to control things is often a victim approach behavior. Trying to control other people is addressed in the persecutor approach. So on this one, we're trying to control things for ourselves, not another person. Downplaying, trying to downplay our issues as an attempt to meet our needs or mask the feeling of our unmet needs. I'm fining. This, I mean, how many times have you heard this, said it yourself? Saying you're okay in such a way that indicates you aren't okay, as a way to try to get somebody to dig deeper into meeting your needs. So this is like, oh, how you doing? I'm fine. Mm-hmm. Obviously you're not fine. Like, obviously.
And sometimes the I'm
Pinballing.
fining can be I'm going to say I'm fine as a way of trying to mask the unmet needs. It's like, I'm just going to say I'm fine enough, like to an extent where I'm going to potentially be able to then believe it for myself, or that I don't have to face the fact, like, no, I'm fine. No, I'm fine. Like, it's a way of us trying to just mask what's actually underneath the surface.
Pinballing, bouncing from victim approach to masker and back again, like consistently, and doing that is a way to get others to meet our needs as a result of these two strategies. So going back and forth between them. Drama farming, creating drama to try and get your needs met, often at the expense of others' needs and some of our own needs too. See a lot of drama farming on social media. Like that comes about quite often.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Strategic storytelling. Telling stories for the purpose of letting other people know our victimhood. So dropping our victimhood into stories and conversations as a way to try and get other people to meet our needs. Energy sucking. Sucking up all the energy, attention, verbal space, physical space to try and get our needs met through other people. Self-burdening, believing we're the only ones who can do something. I have to do it all by myself. This is often combined with the belief that my way is the only right way or the only way in general. And it's an attempt to try and meet our needs or to try to get others to meet our needs for us. Self-pitying, viewing yourself with self-pity, often combined with thinking, why me? It's always happens to me, or I just can't catch a break. Out-victiming, trying to prove that we've had it worse than others, out-victiming other people's experience to try to get others to meet our needs. This one kind of sneaks in there. There are times where I'll be in a conversation and like somebody's they're trying to out-victim and I don't even realize it at first. I'm like, wait a minute, wasn't this conversation about me at first? It's quite interesting how these pop up once you notice them. Yep. Exaggerating our victimhood to appear more in need of other people meeting our needs. So not in comparison to people's experience as in the previous example.
Mm-hmm.
Rescue baiting, enacting behaviors to try and bait them into rescuing us. Trigger-based rescue baiting. That's enacting behaviors and to try and bait them into rescuing us, but also utilizing their known triggers, which amplifies the rescuer reaction. So basically,
trigger warning. An example trigger warning. We're going to talk about self-harm right now.
Thank you for jumping in with that. So an example would be threatening to harm ourselves to somebody who has a history of trauma surrounding self-harm, either to get them to rescue us from another person or situation, or to get them to stop reasonable behaviors that we don't like. So basically using this as the catalyst to stop the mirror being held up on us a lot of times. Inventing or inflating illness or injury, so knowingly exaggerating or making up illness, injury, or ailments to try to get other people to meet our needs, or as a method to avoid uncomfortable or unwanted interactions. So this can be for meeting or masking needs. Self-blocking, creating barriers to our own progress as a way to try to meet our needs. For example, trying to get our security need met by avoiding change or trying to get other people to meet our needs for us. This can be conscious or unconscious. And the last one is hole digging, believing it's going to get worse, so behaving in a way that expedites the process, consciously or unconsciously, or believing we are worthy of or deserve worse, so acting to create what we believe we deserve as a way of trying to get others to meet our needs, or as a way of meeting our needs in red spectrum ways. For example, wanting to get to the bottom of the hole to feel more secure than believing there is further to fall.
Yeah. So a lot of this is about, like, when we're talking about meeting our needs, we're talking about red ways of meeting our needs, not green ways of meeting our needs. Just quickly, at one point, I realized Serena was struggling with reading, so I was like putting some space in between the things for her in order to make it a little bit easier.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Just quickly, I just want to make sure that we covered strategic storytelling, energy sucking, and self-burdening. I didn't hear them, but that's because I was focused on something else. I just want to make sure that we did cover all three of those.
I believe we did.
Awesome. Cool.
Yeah, I have to do it all by myself. Yes.
It was a strategic storytelling. I didn't remember hearing that, but I think that's because I was focused on where's my keyboard and how do I get this spacing in between.
That's where you started separating them.
Yes. So
you got it
like
covered.
a lot of awesome. So it's really important for you to start to look at where have you adopted the victim approach behaviors in your life. And some of these, I mean, they can feel pretty crappy because there's a lot of manipulation in this. And a lot of the time, like when we're doing things in a way where there's manipulation involved, like we're kind of erring into the persecutor approach. So we're going to get to that in the next episode. So this is where you'll start to notice people transferring back and forth along these different lines from one position to the other. The important thing to recognize within this is, as I said, firstly, look for where you've adopted these behaviors yourself. Secondly, look for where other people are, and not in order to point them out, be like, oh, have you noticed you're in victim approach right now? Oh, have you noticed that's a persecutor approach behavior? Not because that a lot of the time that's not going to be a helpful approach, and we are going to get to how do you move somebody from one shape to the other a little bit later in the series. But because it helps you to be able to see it often in somebody else, and then you can start to look for, where do I do this? What is the version of this that I do? Because all of this is about learning how to notice these things for yourself so you can start to shift to the empowerment ecosystem shape instead. Now, it's important to recognize we have all done these, like multiple of these. I'm not going to say I've done all of these. I've done a lot of them. I've worked my way through the list over my lifetime. Like, I mean, 45 years of doing stuff. Yeah, I've touched on innumerable of these over the years. It doesn't make us bad people. It makes us people who didn't know other ways of meeting our needs. And as we said previously, another way of being in the victim approach is adopting a persecutor approach to others to try to avoid being in victim approach ourselves. So it's like being in the victim approach doesn't feel good. And sometimes what we'll do is we'll ping to the persecutor approach because, relatively speaking, it may feel a little bit better than just being in the victim approach does. However, both of them are actually victim approach first and foremost. So it's all part and parcel of the same thing anyway. It's just something that's like, well, that feels really crappy. That feels really, really crappy. Maybe I'll just go for the really crappy rather than the really, really crappy. And we don't realize the cost it has to us. So we're going to go through the persecutor approach in the next episode. So these episodes may be a little bit longer. Some of them are maybe a little bit longer than we usually do. That's because we want to really make sure we cover all of these, because as you're going through them, you'll be like, there'll be times where it'll be like, oh, yeah, I see that. Oh, so-and-so does that. Yeah, I noticed that. Oh, crap, that's one for me. Oh, no, I don't recognize that one. Oh, but that one, that's part of my little toolkit of victim approach ways that I will break out. So we just wanted to make sure we make these as complete as possible so that you really understand these well. Anything you want to jump in with before we finish up?
No, I'm good.
In which case, we will be back next week to talk about the persecutor approach in our next episode. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Between now and then, remember to stay safe, take care of yourself, and to continue to meet your own needs. Lots of love. Bye.
Bye, friends.
That's it for today.
If you like what you heard, please subscribe, rate, and give us a written review,
as it will help more people find us. And remember, the primary characteristics of someone who's in the victim approach are their needs are unmet, often chronically so. Their focus is almost always on their problems. And the predominant feeling they have is anxiety or anxiety related. So if you notice yourself engaging in these behaviors, remember there is a better way, and we're going to get into that in a later episode.
Well, shit. It really is that simple.